This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good Friday morning. Amy Jacobson here. John Anthony in for Dan Proft.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Always a lot going on. We're
Always
filling in.
Yes.
And I want you to know that you're going to be sitting down and listening as a Chicago Democrat finally admitted who's to blame for the border crisis. This is when Alderman Brian Hopkins was on CNN.
I'm a Democrat, but I'll say the Biden administration has absolutely dropped the ball. I'm not going to let them off the hook. They have left us in the ditch with this, and that's unacceptable.
And with that, let's welcome to the program Alderman Brian Hopkins. He's the second ward alderman. Good morning, Mr. Hopkins. How are you?
Good, Amy. Thanks for having me on. Good morning, John.
Good morning, sir.
So did you get any pushback for making that comment on cable TV?
Not really. I've had some colleagues privately, raise their eyebrows, but at the same time acknowledge, the seriousness of the situation we find ourselves in, the impact it's having on our city budget, and the fact that this is an abdication of a federal responsibility. Never in the history of this country has immigration fallen to municipal governments. It's not something we're equipped to handle as a city, and it's not something we should be put in the position of being forced to deal with. That's why our mayor had a press conference recently with the mayor of New York and the mayor of Denver, all saying the same thing. This is not a city's job. We're not equipped for it. We're not very good at it. If you look at the situation and the way the migrants are being handled, we're doing what we can, but we're not really set up for this, and the results speak for itself. And it's been over a year now since we first appealed to the federal government for assistance to be able to pay for this, and our pleas have largely fallen on deaf ears.
So what about the bigger issue? I mean, the policies that are in place to allow people in. When you said it was Biden's fault, is it Biden's fault because he's not giving the city enough federal funds, or is it Biden's fault for not having the Remain in Mexico policy in place that Trump had in place?
Sure. And by the way, as a Democrat, I'm certainly critical of my own party, but I do not think the border situation for 4 years of the Trump presidency was that much better. It didn't have the volume of illegal crossings happening right now, but we didn't have secure borders either. There was 4 years for the Trump administration to solve the problem. They didn't solve it. Now this administration has had 4 years to solve the problem, and they didn't solve it either. So Alderman. Bipartisan blame to go around.
Okay. I used to be a reporter in El Paso and in Tucson, so I was, I woke up every morning looking at the Rio Grande. I know we've always had people sneaking into this country. I saw it with my own eyes. But you cannot deny we've had 9 million people. 70%, now they're saying of the ones that they're catching now, 70% are just gotaways. They just run away. They're not even being sent somewhere. These people are just going wherever they want. And in December, we had 300,000. That's insanity. And they can't all stay in Texas. I mean, you get that, right? I mean, you're aware of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Although, Governor Abbott said something yesterday about, there's more room in New York and Chicago. That's why he's doing this. As if there isn't any room in Texas. It's not a question of room. It's a question of cost. There's a substantial cost. There's a human cost to address the needs of these people, some of them families, who have nothing except, whatever they could put in a backpack. So nobody wants to pay this. That's the problem. I don't really blame Texas. They don't want to pay this cost any more than we do in Chicago. But again, that just highlights the fact that this is a federal problem. But this is not a state level issue, and it's not a city level issue.
Alderman Hopkins, I this is what I'll say. It's coming to Chicago. It's coming to New York. It's coming to L.A. because of one thing that you guys all have in common: sanctuary cities, and Illinois as a whole as a sanctuary state. You guys had an opportunity to change that. What happened there? Why did that fall apart?
Well, I'm not sure it would have changed it. It was an advisory referendum, and I don't know what the results of that referendum were going to be. And now we'll never know because the mayor's team, blocked us from doing it. I voted to put that on the ballot. I wanted to see what the people of Chicago had to say about the concept of a sanctuary city. I suspect at this point a majority would have voted to not remain a sanctuary.
But isn't that the driver of the issue, though?
Advisory only.
Isn't that the driver of the issue, though?
That's why Abbott is sending people here.
Yeah, he said it. The governor said it. That's the reason why.
But
he
Alderman,
said
I
it.
respect that you tried to change that.
Yeah.
I mean, to let us vote, have a say. But it's not. Is that gone? Is that any chance of coming back on the March ballot?
No, it's too late now. We've passed the deadline. The ballots will be printed shortly. With vote by mail and other early voting. There just isn't enough time to put it on the ballot. But we tried. But again, I think it's an interesting question. What would the voters have said? I don't even know that there's been a poll that's done. But if you base it on my phone calls and my emails and people contacting my office, a majority of Chicagoans have decided maybe this isn't a good idea after all, to simply have an open border and say anybody can come here. It doesn't matter what your legal status is, and we're going to provide you with food, housing, medical care. We're spending about $40 million a month now. That's unsustainable. We simply don't have the money to continue this indefinitely. We have other needs in our budget. In fact, the mayor just announced we're spending $95 million has just been added to the budget for migrant services that was originally dedicated for COVID relief. So that is some federal money that we're getting. I should acknowledge that. Great, $95 million, that helps. But the money was supposed to go towards COVID relief, which, the pandemic isn't over, by the way. We just raised our risk level from low to medium for the first time in months because the virus is still out there circulating. And now we can't spend this money what it was intended for to deal with COVID. We're spending it on migrant services.
Yeah.
So it's having a real impact on the city's budget.
And Alderman, you guys have there's a Democrat president in Joe Biden. There's a huge Democrat delegation of congressional folks here in Illinois. Has there been a meeting? Has Biden reached out? Has the congressional delegation reached out to say, we got a problem here, mister. You broke it, now fix it?
Yeah, actually, yes. In the last couple of weeks, there's been a noticeable increase in attention from both our congressional delegation here in Illinois. They've had some meetings with federal officials. The Biden administration has signaled help is on the way. It sounds like they've elevated the rhetoric, at least. I'd like to see the action follow it. Hopefully they'll walk the walk as much as talk the talk. Of course, they're acutely aware that we have the convention coming up in August, and this situation would reflect badly on my party. And I'm one of the voices saying that. I mean, we can't have this situation continue to deteriorate. It's visibly unsettling to drive through the streets of Chicago and see migrant camps all over in the downtown area, Wacker Drive, my community of Streeterville. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
is Chicago ready?
Solve it now. We can't wait for July and say, the convention's the next month. Let's fix things up. It needs immediate attention.
But is Chicago ready for this convention that's coming in? You look at everything that's happening. Are we going to do Gavin Newsom clean up the streets, to have a Chinese guy come in and clean up the streets? Is Chicago ready for the DNC convention coming in August?
Not now. That's fortunately we have some time, but I was here in '96. I was a part of that convention. I saw what we did. The city really came together. We enjoyed a significant economic benefit in the years following that convention. We all benefited from it. So we're hopeful we can repeat it, but we've got some work to do to make that happen, and we're not there.
All right, let's talk about logistics. So this drop-off center now, they want to build 4 warming tents. Is this correct?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. The state really hasn't stepped up to the level that you would expect them to until recently. And this is a state initiative, so that helps. The city of Chicago and our local taxpayers won't be paying for this. The burden will be spread throughout the state, which is, of course, a sanctuary state, as I think you alluded to. So this is the state government bringing some resources to bear to try and do a better job of sorting the migrants when they arrive. And making sure that they wind up in one of the available shelters.
And so how many have come total? Because I heard 30,000, 35,000 since this program began. How many migrants or illegals have come to Chicago?
Yeah, we're at about 30,000. We've got 14,000 right now that we're dealing with, that we're housing in various shelters, or that we know where they are. And then there's another probably about 15,000 that have gone through the system, and we're no longer quite sure where they are. Catholic Charities has been an outstanding agency as far as providing housing placement for them. But once they get out of our system, we stop counting them. So the total in a little over a year is about 30,000. And we have 14,000 right now, that we're trying to accommodate and pay for.
But isn't that fraught with danger? We don't know. What does that mean? We don't know where they are.
Yeah, we're not doing a very good job keeping track of the people that leave our shelters. When they go through the system and they're provided with something resembling permanent housing, a lot of them are finding friends, family, doubling up in housing. And we don't necessarily know. We don't call them every couple of days and say, hey, you stayed in the shelter 3 months ago. We haven't seen you. What's going on? Where are you?
But how much are we giving them a month? I mean, I heard anywhere from $2,500 a month to $9,000 a month.
Yeah, that's excessive. It's not $9,000 a month. The figure varies depending on whether it's a family intact unit, with a head of household that is seeking employment. And that's the other thing. That's one of the most common questions that I get when I interact with the migrant families. Can you help me get a job? A lot of them are here pursuing the traditional American dream. They want to support themselves. They want to support their young families. You see a lot of kids. You see a lot of, moms pushing strollers around outside of the shelters. If we would just get out of their way and provide work permits for them, that's another thing. We need help from the federal government because we can't do that as a local municipality. We can't give them legal work authorization. There's a lot of them that are willing and able to work, and they should be able to do so because there's jobs available.
But Alderman Hopkins, looking for work is not a reason to seek asylum. That has to be changed. If you ever get an opportunity to speak to the congressional delegation, I don't know what law, what policy change, that needs to stop, because coming here looking for work is not a reason to be here in the greatest country ever devised, called the United States of America. Now, I understand, come through the natural ports of entry, but if you're just coming here and invading our country, I think you need to. No, I know. Seeking job or better life, and you're not being pursued by a rogue government or people are trying to kill you. That's one thing, but coming here looking for work is not a reason to come into America. That needs to change. What can be done for that aspect?
Yeah, I agree. The whole notion of asylum seeking right now is really become nothing more than a loophole. People are coached on what to say. They're basically gaming the system. Although if you think about it, though, America, the Statue of Liberty, what does that symbolize? It's always been a beacon of hope.
Support of entry.
Seeking a different life. And I don't think that's changed. Right. What has changed is we don't really screen anymore. It's basically a default open border policy. If you think about Ellis Island, for example, next to the Statue of Liberty, for 60 years, Ellis Island was the point of entry for migrants seeking a better life. And we had a screening process. That was before the internet, obviously. It was a paper-based system. For some of the time, it was even before they had telephones. And yet they somehow managed to screen people coming from other countries seeking a new life in America. And there were three primary things that we tried to screen for. Number one, disease. Did you have tuberculosis? Did you have polio? Did you have smallpox? We didn't want people with communicable diseases coming to America. Second thing we screen for is, are you a fugitive of justice in your home country? Are you a criminal? Did you, murder someone and you're trying to escape justice? The third thing we screened for was, do you have some place to go? We didn't want you to get off that boat and be homeless, the minute you set foot on American soil. We didn't talk about employment because the assumption was if you were coming here, you were coming to work.
Right.
We didn't need to screen for that. You didn't come to America because you thought you were going to get free housing, free food, free medical care, and basically live in the welfare state for the rest of your life. You came here because you were industrious and you thought there were better opportunities here to better yourself and provide for your family than there were in the country you came from.
Yeah, but we came here. We came to ports of entry. That's the difference.
We don't have any ports.
We don't have exactly 12,000 people in that pass, Eagle Pass. In one day? That's insane.
And 390 of those kids that day were unaccompanied minors. which is a whole other topic. All right, Alderman
Thank you,
Hopkins,
sir.
we're going to have to leave it there for today. Brian Hopkins, Alderman of the 2nd Ward, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, sir.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
45 years ago, I started Permaseal Basement Systems working out of my apartment and F-150 pickup truck. Today, we've helped over 500,000 people in greater Chicagoland make their homes healthy and more valuable. Hi, I'm Roy Spencer. I'd like to thank all of you who have trusted Permaseal and reassure you that your trust is well placed. You can trust Permaseal to use only our own professional employees that will respect you and your home. Trust that we will deliver the best value.